On May 20th, the voters in Pittsburgh will head to the polls to select their candidates for mayor. A large Democratic advantage in voter registration could mean that position will be decided in the primary between incumbent Ed Gainey and challenger Corey O'Connor. Today on Voices of Reason, we talk with both men about their plans for Pittsburgh, the challenges facing the city, and why they are the best candidate for the job. That and more coming up on Voices of Reason. Now on Voices of Reason, we're pleased to be joined by the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, Ed Gainey. Mayor Gainey was elected to the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives in 2012 and was elected mayor of the city of Pittsburgh in 2021. Mayor Gainey, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. How you been?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Good.
For those who might be listening and don't know a lot about your background, could you share a little bit more about yourself? I didn't want to go through the whole resume and why you're running for re-election.
Yeah, one of the reasons is that, growing up, I wasn't in a position where I ever met an elected official in my life. They never came in my neighborhood, never knocked on my doors. I really never met an elected official until I got to college. I went to Morgan State University. And at the time I was at Morgan State, there was a campaign to defund HBCU colleges. And my first day of class, the teacher asked me why I was in class. And I told her, well, you teaching, right? And her response to me was, you're supposed to be out there with your classmates. So I joined my classmates, and we walked from Morgan State University down to City Hall. And the first elected official I had seen is a gentleman by the name of Mayor Kurt Smoke from afar. And I watched how him and Congressman at the time, probably was council person then, Kwasi Mfume, they really helped to keep Morgan State at HBCU. It was the first time that I had really ever been into a protest. First time I had, been to a state capital, Annapolis, to be able to talk about, making sure that we got the funding that was necessary for Morgan State. I came back home and I was just excited. I said that's the first time that the light bulb went off and I wanted to get into community development work. I took a job with a community development corporation that was closed. It was closed down due to racial tension. I took a volunteer spot there because what I told them, it wasn't necessarily the means of money, but the necessary means of knowledge for me to understand how community development works. And if they like the work that I perform, when they got funding, pay me, pay me. And that's how I got started. From there, I went to work for a state representative. So I started to understand state government. And I went to go work for a mayor. First mayor I worked for was a gentleman by the name of Mayor Tom Murphy. Second mayor I worked for was a mayor by the name of Luke Ravenstall. And I ran for state representative. And I ran for mayor, and I'm here now.
So let's talk about your tenure in City Hall. What would you point to as your biggest successes so far? And by the same token, what would you say still has to be accomplished in a second term?
I'm proud. For the amount of time that we've been in office, we've been here for 3 years. I'm proud of the things that we were able to accomplish, like a 19% job creation in southwestern Pennsylvania, where the rest of the county has zero job growth. To me, that's amazing. Working with different public-private partnerships to increase job opportunities, working with our school district to move people into public sector jobs, working with our EMS to recruit more people into emergency medical services through something called the Freedom House, in which Freedom House was the first emergency medical services in the country that ended up becoming the city's EMS. So those type of initiatives I'm very proud of, working with Governor Shapiro as well as County Exec Sarah Anamorado to bring back $600 million over 10 years to revitalize and reimagine our downtown. 7 conversion projects from commercial real estate into housing, something I'm extremely proud of. Built more affordable housing than any other mayor in the last 20 years. Our homicide rate down 33%. One homicide is too many, but to be down from 71 all the way down to 42 is amazing and continuing to decrease. 45% reduction in gun violence. When I came in, we had bridges falling down. Collapsing. I'm proud to say at this time that we have no bridge in failing condition. All of our bridges have been upgraded, and the ones that haven't, we always apologize for the inconvenience, but we've closed them because when I made the city a promise is that for the first time, we would never wake up again to a bridge collapsing. Also, the first time in over 20 years, we were able to get a police contract done where they got a pay raise as well as a disciplinary matrix. First time in the history that's ever happened. So we've done a lot of great things, a lot of great things. The NFL draft is coming here, working with Mr. Rooney and working with Mr. Rooney. Our bond rating agency, particularly in the time coming out of COVID, moved from AA minus to AA. We finished the year with a $4 million surplus. Those type of things are things we're proud of. We went out and got a $30 million affordable housing bond to build and preserve affordable housing. When I came in, we had not moved one parcel out of our land bank, not one parcel out of the land bank. We worked with our state delegation to change the law because we had to change the law. I don't know why you create a land bank and the law ain't right for you to be able to move property. Like, that don't make no sense. But we were able to change the law, and as of the day, we moved 160 parcels out of our land bank back onto the tax rolls. And one of the other things that I'm very proud of is the fact that two things. One is we created what we call own PGH, where we took low-income renters and made them homeowners. First time that they've experienced generational wealth. And if you were in our city last year, this is the thing I'm a lot proud of. And you were between the ages of 13 and 17, particularly as much as we talk about our youth. We had no homicides between the ages of 13 and 17 in the city of Pittsburgh.
You've maintained that the city is in good financial health. You pointed to the strong bond ratings from S&P Global and Fitch. Your opponent has said bond ratings only show the ability to repay a debt, and without a change in leadership, Pittsburgh's financial stability will crater. How do you respond to that statement?
Yeah, really, we don't even pay attention to that. That's nonsense. That's just trying to distract what the obvious is. There's no way that a bond rating agency is going to move you from AA minus to AA without sound fiscal responsible leadership. We take pride in that. We take pride in the fact that we ended, and we know throughout the state how many of these municipalities and our counties are dealing with budgetary items. We didn't have to raise taxes. That's number one. We ended with a $4 million surplus. The bond rating agencies moved us from AA minus to AA. So the political rhetoric, again, is all talk. Let's talk about action. Let's talk about what's actually happened. 3 budgets with no problem moving them through city council. Amazing. So when you think about the 3 budgets that we moved through city council, which is amazing, got signed in, excuse me, and got signed in the law. Secondly, is the bond rating agency, and thirdly, to lead with to end the year with a $4 million surplus and not have to raise taxes. That speaks volumes of fiscal responsibility. So there's rhetoric and there's action. That's rhetoric he's talking about, because you could ask many of the mayors across this state if they would love to have that record of fiscal soundness.
I know housing is a top issue among Democratic voters in Pittsburgh. You and your opponent share many of the same priorities, but you differ on something called inclusionary zoning. Could you share your position and why it's better for the city than your position is better for the city than your opponent's?
Yeah, inclusionary zoning is extremely important. We've had a run of building nothing but market rate in this city. And in building market rate, we've lost over 15,000 people in the city. We've lost 3,000 working class families in the city. We've lost 700 Black homeowners in the city. So when you look at the statistics of the county, the Allegheny County got a population increase and we got a population decrease. And part of that is, again, the fundamental need to have housing. Inclusionary zoning says that, and I think it's a wonderful program. We've already had a pilot program in Lawrenceville and Bloomfield, and it hasn't stopped development. Matter of fact, it's really a pro-development tool. What we're saying is that on units that are being built as 20 units or more, that we would like affordable housing, 10% of those units to be affordable at 50% of the AMI. That's a mom or a dad that's making $45,000 a year, raising 2 kids, can afford to live in that unit. There's no reason why my opponent believes in classism, wealthy over here and low income over here, or working class families over here. I don't agree with that. I agree that if we're going to build over 20 units, let us have 10% affordability. You're asking for taxpayer dollars in order to close your gap to many of these developers, but he's already took the funding from them. See, when you take the funding from real estate tycoons and they've given you $280,000 for your campaign, you can't be for affordable. This is about people versus power. And I believe that housing is a human right and that everybody should have an opportunity, particularly when we're using taxpayer dollars, to have affordability in every unit, over 20 units, so that at the end of the day, everybody can be connected to the fabric of a community that is moving forward. That is a human right, and I stand by it.
You talked about how important it is to have housing available to all the residents of Pittsburgh. We still see not only in the city but also throughout the Commonwealth a brain drain, young people leaving not only Western Pennsylvania, the city, and also the state. What do you think we also can do to retain young people in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. One, I think it starts in high school. I think that, what we've done coming in, let me talk about high school and I'll move it all the way up to the college ranks. But in high school, we started something called the Youth Civic Leadership Academy, where we give kids 3 college credits through Community College of Allegheny County, and they get a paid stipend for partners from work to learn about government. So now it's exciting. We also create youth interns so that youth interns understand how city council works, what is the job description of a city council person, what is the job description of a mayor, how both of them work together, what does Parks and Rec look like. And we've paid them a stipend, not to just pay them a stipend, but we want them to truly understand how their government works for them, how the budget works, the whole nine. We were able to do that. Now let's talk about it from a college perspective, because let me go back to the high school. We created something called Pathways to Prosperity, where we partner with the Pittsburgh Public Schools Career of Technical Education to be able to create pathways, not only in the unionized job, but also in the city government, not only in the city government, but the public-private partnerships that we put together to ensure that moving forward, these kids are learning about it. Exposure is growth. The more I can expose these kids to different industries, different jobs, the more they're going to grow. And if they're learning them right here in the city, I don't have to worry about if they're going to leave. They're going to stay because this is where they got initiated at. And we like that. At colleges, continuing to create the relationships and understand what type of city we are now. We are now an ads, meds. We are now a technology city. We are now a robotic city. We have moved away from the steel mill city into a city that is driven by technology. Some of the leading tech companies are here: Google, Microsoft, Mega. They're all right here. So making sure that we're creating that economy and helping them to be able to promote the level where we're at right now helps increase job growth.
Let me follow up on the eds and meds comment because I think you're absolutely right. But I know there are some people that feel as though the big five, when it comes to the nonprofits in the city, may not be paying their fair share in lieu of taxes. What do you think should be done in that regard? Should they be paying more for services?
We've come in and had great conversations. We continue to have conversations about why there's a need for them to pay their fair share. I know Highmark has been a great partner. They're already saying, "Hey, we're willing," but UPMC is not. UPMC is, for whatever reason, they're just not at a place where they want to do it. So we went to the property appeals to have each one of them, not only UPMC, because we didn't want to just single out all nonprofits in our city, to be able to make sure that they're doing exactly what they have to do to maintain that tax exempt status. We are right now going through the process of having all their properties looked at through the property assessment. And our hope is that when it comes to UPMC, we get one of their companies where we could take it to Commonwealth Court, and in that we have an opportunity to open up the whole portfolio. And we know when we open up the whole portfolio exactly what we're going to find. So again, we still keep the door open, hoping that we can get a deal of them paying their fair share. But the reality is we've had to use different measures because at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the tax burden is not just on the back of our resident. There's no need for we didn't have to raise taxes, but there's no need for us to even think about raising taxes when you got nonprofits that own 37% of our real estate and they pay no taxes at all. 37% of our real estate, use our police department, use our fire, use our ambulance and everything else, and you pay nothing. You pay nothing at all when it comes to your fair share of how you can help our city to grow. I've always said, if you're the healthcare to care, then care about the overall health of our city. Now, my opponent, on the other hand, he's already took $25,000 from UPMC executives. So at the end of the day, he's ready to cut a deal that they don't have to do what they need to do in order for this region to grow. And that's why I said this is a race about people versus power. We need UPMC to do the right thing, pay into a pilot program so that we can make sure that we are growing this region the way we need to grow it. Not cutting side deals where if you do this, then I'll give you executive money. No, that's wrong. What we need to do is make sure they're paying a fair share so that we have the funding to make sure that our bridges are taken care of, make sure that our streets are being done, make sure that our fleet, police cars, ambulance, and fire trucks are being taken care of. If this city is going to become a complete city, it's because we're working together, not against.
I know one of the other challenges that Pittsburgh is facing, certainly in the other side of the Commonwealth, Philadelphia faces, is the public transportation crisis. Pittsburgh Regional Transit, SEPTA in Philadelphia. Your time in Harrisburg taught you a lot, I'm sure. How can you get Republicans and Democrats in Harrisburg to come together and help solve this crisis?
Well, let's go back to when we did it in Harrisburg. There's no question that everybody understands that you need mass transit. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Everybody understands that you need, particularly if you live in Royal PA, that you need roads, that you need to make sure that the bridges are maintained. So there's always going to be an interest at every aspect of this diverse state that needs mass transit for some reason. There's no question about it. The catch is, how do we get there? So I think the formula is that they have to come together and determine what they're going to increase and how they're going to do it in a way that is respectful and monetize both, particularly Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, when it comes to mass transit. To not find that mechanism or that financial instrument that we need to do it, it's hurtful to the overall economy of the state. They all know that. I have no doubt that they'll get a deal done. From my perspective, we'll do two things. We will always advocate with our county exec, Sarah Anna Morado, to fight for more mass transit dollars, because we understand the impact of mass transit in our region. And without mass transit, you would have people, particularly in low-income communities, that would have a difficult time getting to work, would have a difficult time getting to the medical facilities that they need, would have a difficult time getting to college. It would hurt the impact and the fabric of our community. So we have to ensure that we're advocating at a high level. Secondly, I think that we also have to be forward thinking, because we know there's going to be a fix to mass transit. But for us, as transit-oriented development, making sure that we're in our zoning code, that we are building more housing around transit-oriented stops, because the more that we are close to transit, the less dependent we have to be on cars. So there's the advocacy, but there's also future thinking of how we build to make sure that we're taking advantage of mass transit so that they can understand the importance of it from an advocacy standpoint.
I know that some people have thought about this primary election as a test of the future of progressive politics in Pittsburgh. Others have said it's more about democratic politics in the state than anything else. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, let me, I'm gonna be direct about that. I think that this is really about the future of the Democratic Party and why the people power movement is strong. Because at the end of the day, we've demonstrated that this is how you win. It's that people power. It's the door knocking. It's the phone calling. It's the neighbor to neighbor. It's moving us forward in a way that dictates exactly how we can win as Democrats. And plus, let me be honest, I think what you're seeing out of, President Trump, in America, this is the first time she's been in this situation where you have an elected president, and an appointed one at the same time.
Right.
And I think that when you think about the attacks that are going on, it's creating more of a people power movement. Whether it's ICE, and I was one of the first mayors to come out and be against ICE, because at the end of the day, there's nothing safe about creating trauma in family. The families that's been immigrants that's been here 20, 15, 30 years. And now all of a sudden you're talking about breaking up families. I don't know if a child come home, if mama's gonna be there. I don't know if a child to come home, daddy's gonna be there. I don't know if they're gonna show up at my school. DEI, trying to make people feel like they're only qualified based on the color of their skin instead of the qualifications of what they've been trained to do in life. Whether you're talking about LGBTQIA, which you see UPMC already catering down to Trump, at the end of the day, not providing the level of gender affirming care that they should be. That's another community that we have to fight for. The VA community, making sure that our veterans understand that just because he's cutting programs and trying to erase history, memories of what our veterans have done, that's another community. Trying to make the impact that he's trying to make with HUD by rolling back some of the anti-discrimination pieces of law that's in place right now. That's why we took a step and we signed into executive order that if you want to do business with the city, you have to abide by our anti-discrimination law. That's critical. Talking about that piece, talking about closing the Social Security building right here in our city in East Liberty, closing it down. That's another piece. I've just talked about 6 or 7 different communities coming together. So when we talk about what is the the progressive democratic message, it's a people powered by communities that will not stand to be oppressed anymore, that will push forward for the rights of everybody in this city and in this country. And you're seeing it more and more. And that's how we will continue to be victorious.
I think you made it pretty clear how the Trump administration policies have affected the city. Your opponent's campaign, or your campaign, has claimed that MAGA advisors are trying to buy your opponent's campaign. Could you explain exactly what you mean by that?
In the month of January, he raised 160,000 from MAGA operatives and consultants. He met on Christmas. He met on President's Day with operatives and consultants of the MAGA movement. Now, he's given 3 reasons. One, he said he didn't know they were going to be there. Now, we all know this is a political environment. You're not meeting with top MAGA operatives, and you don't know they're going to be there. Like, that don't even make no sense. Then secondly, he was only there to give a stump speech. Come on now, which one is it? And then thirdly, he said there was also Democratic strategists in there as well. Whatever your reason to be in, that's not what you do. Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to have some Democrats and Republicans that give the both sides of the D's and R's. We've always had that. But the MAGA money is different. The MAGA money and the consultation that comes with it means that you can't stand up to Trump like you want to. You can't take $160,000, meet with his operatives, and then come back and say he has no control over me. This is politics. Where you get your money is where you're going to get your advice. And so when you think about what my opponent has done is 160,000 from MAGA, Trump, consultants, fundraisers, meeting with them, the whole nine. 280,000 from real estate tycoons who don't believe in affordability and believe in housing segregation, not housing integration. And third, 25,000 from UPMC execs. And now you're talking about you would remove any type of lawsuit that could be filed because you believe you could cut a deal with them. And his thing is that they'll pay for the bridges and roads. We got police, fire, EMS, we got parks, we got the whole nine. There's no deal cutting. This is about how can we get you to pay your fair share so that we can utilize the funding across the board to be able to fund the things that we need to get funded. So at the end of the day, we have a city that works for all.
You've been very kind with your time. Let's get you out of here on a couple of easy questions. Your favorite Steeler player growing up?
Oh,
I didn't realize that was going to be the toughest question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I have several, but my favorite one of all time would probably be James Harrison. I think that interception in the end zones and taking it back to the house as of a linebacker of that size, his dedication to working out and being in the gym, his dedication to the discipline, not being someone that was drafted in the first or second round, continuing to work hard, someone that took his craft extremely important, and someone when he hits you, you felt it for 5 weeks. That James Harrison would be my favorite.
And the ability to run 95 yards and then stumble the last 5 into the end zone. Let's talk about the spring sport. How about the Pirates?
Okay, the Pirates. The Pirates. Well, listen, we just hope if they can get the 500 ball, I'll be happy.
Okay.
I like the pitcher. He's doing good, but we get the 500. I'm happy.
Okay. Do you have a favorite Permane sandwich?
I used to like the ones with the coleslaw and the French fries, but now that I got to watch my health a little bit, I can't do all that now. So that would be my favorite. That would be
Speaking as someone from the other side of the state, it took me a little while to get used to coleslaw and fries on a sandwich, but I understand what you're saying. Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey, thank you very much for joining.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to be able to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, have a great day.
Now on Voices of Reason, we're pleased to be joined by a candidate for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, Corey O'Connor. Corey, the county controller in Allegheny County, graduated from Duquesne University After a lifelong Pittsburgh resident, graduated from Pittsburgh Central Catholic. His father, Bob, served as mayor in 2006. Corey was elected to City Council in District 5 in 2012, where he served until 2022 before he was elected as controller. Corey, thanks so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
For those who might not be listening, may not pay as much attention to in Western Pennsylvania as some might in the Eastern part, could you tell us a little bit about your background and why you're running for mayor?
Yeah, so as you mentioned before, spent 11 years on Pittsburgh City Council, last 3 years as the county controller. Prior to that, I actually worked in Congressman Doyle's office as his community development representative. So background involved in communities, building communities up. And I think, what we're seeing right now in our city is a mentality to manage decline instead of talking about growth and opportunity. And I think that really has presented a huge challenge in Pittsburgh. And I think, given my background, given the experiences that I've had on council, working to rebuild communities just like Hazelwood that we did when I was on council, building affordable housing in areas that I represented that never saw it before. I think I bring a unique experience that day one, we could start rebuilding Pittsburgh again and putting us back on the national stage, that we are open for people to come and move back to Pittsburgh. And right now, we're just not seeing that.
Your opponent, Mayor Gainey, says Pittsburgh is in good financial health, according to the city's bond ratings. You disagree, calling it outright fiscal financial mismanagement, I believe. You were on city council when the city emerged from state financial oversight in 2018. Do you think Pittsburgh is close to finding itself returning to Act 47 as it was in 2003? What do you say about the
Yeah.
city's
I mean,
financial?
unfortunately, we are. If you look at what got us into Act 47, it was a hiring spree. This mayor went on a hiring spree with COVID money, and there's a parks tax in Pittsburgh that he also hired people instead of investing in our parks, which is where the tax was supposed to go. So you go on a hiring spree, you show no growth, which his 5 year budget shows less people going to be employed in the city of Pittsburgh, as well as real estate taxes declining over those 5 years. And you also take on additional debt, which they are doing. And those three things add up to how you get back into Act 47, or at this point, receivership and state oversight. And when they say, well, our bond rating is great and we get all these A pluses and all these things, it's amazing though. I've never seen a bond rating plow a street, fix a water fountain, build a playground, invest in communities. That's not what those do. Those basically say you're willing to talk to the bond rating agencies and say, I will cut major initiatives to pay your bond back, or as the mayor won't admit to it, I will raise a fee or a tax to pay your bond back. And that's the funny thing about when you're talking about bond ratings. The reality of that is it's not actually doing the job. And you could say your ratings a AA+ or AAA, whatever they want to say. But ultimately, that is just your ability to pay back a debt. You're not actually building a city of the future. And that's where we really need to have a conversation about who's really looking at our finances. And there are some major things in our 5 year projections that have $0 towards them. And those are things that actually how a city operates. That's in bridges, that's in small business assistance. They're cutting our fleet for our paramedics, police, and fire from 9 million down to 2 something million dollars. How are you buying more vehicles when you're not going to spend money on new vehicles? And we know those are the vehicles that get used the most each year in a city like ours.
I know housing is a top issue among Democratic voters in Pittsburgh, and that's according to a poll from a Democratic aligned firm that supports progressive causes. You and your opponent share many of the same priorities when it comes to housing, but you differ on something called inclusionary zoning. Could you share your position and why it is better for the city than your opponents?
Yeah, so always supported affordable housing. When I was on the city council, we voted to start the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That was something that was needed. And we went out and sought a fee, and we got a fee to do more affordable units. We need about 6,000 affordable units. We need 15,000 market rate units. Inclusionary zoning, I voted for in a neighborhood like we demoed it in, was in Lawrenceville, because the market was getting outrageous. And it's a tool that we can use. However, what they want to do is a flat tool all across the city. So they're basically giving up with negotiating with community groups, negotiating with developers, negotiating with affordable housing developers to actually build affordable housing. They want a blanket ordinance all across Pittsburgh. We know our markets can't handle that. We're not growing fast enough. And their argument is, well, we just want 10% in each building. No problem. Let's have that conversation. But when his goal is 1,000 units a year in general, and now you're at 10% of that, you're not building enough volume of affordable housing. And also, every neighborhood market is different. And, for me, you have to look at tax credits. You have to look at LRTAs, at other incentives, because one model doesn't work in every neighborhood. And they point to Washington, D.C. Well, Washington, D.C. has a lot more people living in it than we do, and they can afford to make those changes. But the reality of it is Pittsburgh can use inclusionary zoning as a tool, but it can't be flat across the city because we know that system doesn't work in Pittsburgh.
Your opponents criticized you for your campaign fundraising, in which Pittsburgh Public Source found that 1 out of every $4 has come to you from professionals, executives, and PACs involving building and selling housing and commercial real estate. Works out to just under $360,000. He says he won't sell to the highest bidder. Do you have a rebuttal to that statement?
Yeah, I think it's laughable on many levels when it comes to what he's criticized me on. We took our lead in this campaign from the mayor. The mayor's received over $200,000 from the same individuals he's now criticizing me for. And then, for me, he also tells people, and his deputy mayor said in the same article that I don't return phone calls. Well, wait, you're not returning people's phone calls? How are you going to operate a city? Everybody should have a voice in this city, whether, they're building an affordable unit, they're building a market rate unit. You have to take everybody's phone calls. And when the deputy mayor makes a statement like that, it's even worse for somebody down the street or a neighborhood organization that might not be supporting the mayor. He's not going to return your calls. I return every call, whether you're for or against me. That's not your job. The mayor's job is to talk to everybody, especially when the city of Pittsburgh right now is in a decline. We need all hands on deck and everybody's voice and everybody's opinion on what they can do within their own neighborhood to help it grow. Is everybody going to be right? No, I understand that. But you have to be open-minded. And for them to block calls coming to the mayor or the deputy mayor, that just shows you're not actually trying to grow Pittsburgh. And we all know this is a political stunt, just like he's making arguments all the way through about other donors that I've gotten, who he has gotten over the last 4 years. But 3 months before an election, apparently his donors are bad people now. It's a political joke is how I see it. Yeah.
Well, I'll move away from the compare and contrast and just ask, how do you think the policies of the Trump administration are affecting Pittsburgh? What would you do as mayor to either support those or fight back against those policies?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously step up and fight back, especially when it comes to what they're doing with life sciences, education. Our lifeblood over the last decade has been in healthcare education with Pitt and CMU and other great universities that we have in Pittsburgh. If you're going to cut their funding, that hurts research jobs, that hurts employees that are already there. It would really cripple our economy in Pittsburgh if things like that continue from Washington. And I was here, unfortunately, the last time the Trump administration was here, and we fought the same way. We know we're not going to see hundreds of millions of dollars. So we have to really be financially responsible over the next couple years to spend money on things that are going to impact Pittsburghers the most. And right now, they're not doing any of that internally, but also to fight the national politics that are coming, we have to step up because that would really hurt our economy in Pittsburgh.
Let me ask you about the meds and eds situation in the city. There are those who feel that nonprofits like UPMC or Pitt or Carnegie Mellon don't really pay their fair share in taxes for services, not only in Pittsburgh, across the Commonwealth. We find this with meds and eds. Do you believe that those, as a couple of examples, should pay more in lieu of taxes?
Yeah, I believe they should. And I believe you need a leader that's going to sit down and talk to them. If you listen to, my opponent, he says, well, we had a deal, but then we didn't have a deal. It's all press conferences. You're not actually solving the problem. For me, you go to those nonprofits direct and you ask for specifics. something that falls in line with their mission, and they are willing to donate to the city of Pittsburgh. They are, you know, they can be great partners if you get a mayor that's going to be direct with where their money's going. Mayor Peduto, prior to this current mayor, had $100 million in a nonprofit from nonprofits in an outside organization that was going to invest in housing, invest in infrastructure. And this mayor came along and said, I don't want to do that. So you wasted $100 million. We know he's turned down offers from the hospitals in the past as mayor. He's turned them down. So for me, you go direct with requests that hits their mission. So for example, we have ambulances that break down right now in this city to and from calls. So what I would do is ask them to purchase ambulances for us. Even go further and say, look, a third of our fleet in the winter, our plow trucks were down. A third of our fleet were down because we're not investing in it. Why don't you guys help support that? Because it's about safety. It's getting people to your hospitals. It's getting people to your campuses. You can do those little things that they will give us that money for those projects. And then the better part of it for residents of the city, now I have saved money as mayor for capital projects. Now I can go to your small business districts and invest in streetscapes. We can put in brand new lighting on certain business district streets. There's just no long-term plan here. And I think people are frustrated with that.
As people leave Pennsylvania and the cities, especially young people, young college graduates, what do you think can be done to keep those graduates from having a brain drain in Pittsburgh and across the Commonwealth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great conversation to have, and one of the endorsements that I was very proud of that we got on the campaign was from the Pitt Democrats.
Mhm.
There were a lot of kids voted. The mayor had 4 votes. We had 27 votes. So that shows that the youth in this city want a change. They want a city where they can grow, they can thrive. Their startup companies can expand here. But right now, we don't even have those conversations. So when people drive around the city and they see vacant buildings downtown, they see vacant neighborhood storefronts, they see, vacant spaces, abandoned buildings, I look at that as opportunity. And you have to put those opportunities in the forefront for when people want to actually invest in Pittsburgh. And I think if you're talking about growing families, having young people stay here, we have to center a message on growth, especially when it comes to youth. And that was one of our first initiatives that we put out there, was about youth and families and how we can support them with our rec centers, with our open spaces, with connecting neighborhoods using bikes and trails. All those things make an impact on younger people so that they want to stay in a city like ours.
One of the big issues across the Commonwealth, certainly in the eastern part of the state with SEPTA, and certainly with in Pittsburgh, how will you address the public transportation crisis right now that the city is undergoing and begging Harrisburg for more funding?
Yeah, I mean that's going to be very difficult considering the city, has to partner with the county. Our county actually runs the Port Authority here, or well now it's PRT. So we have to have those conversations jointly with the county. As county controller, it's actually a little frustrating. I don't have audit abilities on our authorities. And that's a law that I wish was changed because I'd love to see the books. Not that anything's wrong with it, but it gives a local elected by the people, a little more oversight on boards and authorities. And it would be very helpful, not in a gotcha, but just to be more transparent with where the funding's going. Have me as your county controller as an ally. If I'm elected mayor, I want to be your ally to go to the state to talk about transportation funding, how that's going to impact the city, and what we can do to bridge those gaps when services, well, hopefully they're not cut, but if some of them are, what can we do to partner to bridge those gaps across Pittsburgh? And I think that's where we have to have this conversation, because transit, we know, is a huge part of how you grow and how you connect people to different neighborhoods that they can't get to. So that also goes back to development. Let's be more aggressive with transit-oriented development. If lines are going to be cut or if stops are going to be cut, find out where those prime stops are and invest economic development around them so you can benefit residents that might live there, businesses that might be on those bus lines. And that's how you can really grow a population using transit-oriented development more than we do right now.
Some people have said that this election in particular is a test of the future of progressive politics in Pittsburgh. I've talked to other people who says this election says more about Democratic politics in the state than anything else. Well, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, my thoughts on that, I am, if you look at my record, look at what I've done that's progressive in this city. I've passed sick leave, common sense gun laws, early childhood education, affordable housing. Those things are considered progressive. But to me, it's about who can operate this city and help it grow. That's the conversation. I think we look at this and we try to nationalize all of these local races when in reality, if we start doing a better job, Democrats across the board, at running our cities, we will get more people excited to vote for Democrats in the future. And I think that's how I look at this election. If we have somebody that's going to turn Pittsburgh around and, bring more people here, reuse our space, look at, different sources of energy and clean energy that we don't talk about enough, creating a new industry in Pittsburgh, you can really turn the tide on this national conversation, localize it to say, look, here's the Democratic Party moving people forward, helping people find housing, helping people find jobs. Let's get back to the core roots of our party and deliver that to our residents first.
You've been very kind with your time. Let me hit you with a couple of lightning round questions.
Okay.
Favorite Pittsburgh Pirate?
Favorite Pittsburgh Pirate. Wow. So I am going to go totally off. I'm there might be, if a couple hundred Pittsburghers know this, obviously, Roberto Clemente is everybody's favorite Pirate. We all know that. That's a hands down argument. But when I was growing up, they were very good from 90 to 92. And Sid Bream coming around third base still gives me nightmares. It was the worst sports experience ever. But my favorite Pirate growing up, again, this is a obscure one, but a Pirate, he was a utility player. His name was John Cangelosi.
Oh, wow.
And he was a very short individual. My height is about the same. He wore number 44, and he was just a scrapper. When you got in, we were so excited to see John Cangelosi. So it's a tie between him and Tony Pena because I always wanted to be a catcher. I ended up being a shortstop and a second baseman. But Tony Pena and John Cangelosi are my top Pirates. I know they're a little obscure, but that's a good one for any Pirate historian out there. I'll have that conversation. Yeah.
Okay, now moving from baseball season to football season, should the Steelers sign Aaron Rodgers?
They need to sign somebody. I know that. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think it's funny when you walk around and yes, do we need a quarterback? 100%. If he's going to come in and help turn that offense around, especially when you have McCaffrey and other receiver weapons that he would have on the team, I think he still has a great arm. The one thing I don't like is that there's this waiting period and, what's it do for the team and their mentality if he just shows up at training camp. That's stuff that higher ups have that conversation. Us as fans just want the drama to be over and somebody signed to be our quarterback so we can move on with other things.
Little known fact about Corey O'Connor is he was formerly the head golf coach at Pittsburgh Central Catholic and not only led the Vikings to one state title in 2016, but then followed it up in 2018 and 2022. How did you get started as a golf coach?
So I grew up playing baseball when I was about 9 years old. I started playing golf. I grew up playing Shenley Park, which is now actually named after my dad. And then I went into coaching Little League, and my degree is actually elementary ed. So I really wanted to be a teacher. And then an opportunity arose where I could work for the congressman. I was actually hired my last year at Duquesne to be the golf coach. So I did it for 17 years. I was 20. My first match, my second match, I turned 21, and the opposing coach thought I was a player. So we had a couple words exchanged. But it was just great. I mean, you got to really make a difference in kids' lives, whether it was on the course, more off the course. And I think that's something that I had a great passion in. And, a friend of mine, for a long time, we were the Buffalo Bills. We couldn't win our local final for almost a decade. And then once you won one state, you kind of just rolled it in and you were building momentum and building a culture. And, we forget how important coaches are in people's lives. And I just always loved doing it. And it was something special. And actually, there's probably videos on YouTube of it, but every time we won a state title, there were lakes at the courses. So I made a bet that if you win, I'll jump in the lake. And I took a lot of lake jumps in my years coaching at Central. Yes.
I should have prompted you in our discussion beforehand that I'm a Bills fan. So invoking the Bills right there. Yeah, I don't know if that scored any points with me, but these things.
Sorry, but it was like we would go to the final and I would lose this way. I would lose that way. And then somebody was just like, well, you're just Marv Levy. It's fine. I was like, okay, Marv Levy was actually a great coach. So I'll take it. Yeah.
We'll send you on your way on this one. Is there anything else you'd like to mention as we get back to the idea that with the campaign, with the primary coming up in May, as you run for the Democratic nomination for mayor of Pittsburgh? Any final words?
Yeah, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you for viewing. Thank you for having me. I think this is a really transitional point in Pittsburgh, that we have somebody in myself who can come in, start right away, start a growth conversation again. And I end sort of every stump speech with this is I am very excited to do this job. I think I can do this job. It's not going to be easy, but collectively as Pittsburghers, my office is always open. And we have the ability in the next couple of years, if elected, to rebuild one of America's greatest cities. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about doing this. And, I thank the people of Pittsburgh who have been supporting me over the years and hope that that will continue when it comes to May 20th. And again, thank you for having me on the show.
Corey O'Connor, the Allegheny County Controller and a candidate for the Democratic nomination for mayor of the city of Pittsburgh. Corey, thanks so much for joining us today on Voices of Reason.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Pittsburgh Mayor Ed Gainey and Allegheny County Controller Corey O'Connor for joining us today. Remember, the last day to register to vote in the primary is May 5th, with the election slated for Tuesday, May 20th. Thanks for joining us today. For Voices of Reason, I'm Steve Ulrich.